Pueblo people's beliefs, traditions, and rituals. Zuni, Acoma, Taos, Santo, Domingo, and the living traditions of the ancestral Southwest. The Pueblo is not the building. The Pueblo is the community, the people who have lived in the same houses on the same mesas for 1,000 years. Acoma Pueblo has been continuously inhabited since approximately 1150 CE. The kiva is not a meeting room, it is the opening in the earth through which the ancestors breathe. Personal reading series Haligricity, June 2026, IQ Productions. Contents: a note on sacred knowledge and Pueblo sovereignty. Introduction: who the Pueblo peoples are. Part 1, the Eastern Pueblos, Rio Grande traditions. Part 2, the Western Pueblos, Zuni and Hopi. Part 3, the Ancestral Puebloans, the deep history. Part 4, the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, the most successful indigenous uprising. Pueblo cosmology, the emergence in the four worlds. Part 6, the Kachina tradition in Pueblo peoples. Part 7, the kiva, the sacred underground chamber. Part 8, the kiva, complete sacred protocol. Part 9, Zuni, Ashiwi traditions, and the Shalako ceremony. Part 10, the Shalako ceremony. Step by step. Part 11, Acoma, Sky City and the living tradition. Part 12, Taos Pueblo, the two-house sacred community. Part 13, the Blue Lake ceremony and water is sacred. Part 14, rain ceremonies, calling water to the desert. Part 15, the rain dance, step by step. Part 16, corn, the sacred plant of Pueblo life. Part 17, the corn dance, step by step. Part 18, sacred pottery, vessels as sacred containers. Part 19, the clown societies, Kashari and sacred inversion. Part 20, death and the Kachina spirit world. Part 21, the Haligricity lens, the kiva and sacred community. A note on sacred knowledge and Pueblo sovereignty. The Pueblo peoples maintain one of the most carefully protected bodies of sacred knowledge in any indigenous tradition. Many Pueblo communities distinguish explicitly between what may be shared publicly and what is held as sacred community property. The specific prayers, the specific songs, the specific ceremonial content of the most sacred ceremonies are not appropriate to document outside the community. This document presents what Pueblo cultural representatives, scholars working with tribal permission, and publicly available tribal sources have shared. The specific content of restricted ceremonies is not included. Introduction: who the Pueblo peoples are. The Pueblo peoples are the indigenous nations of the American Southwest who live in permanent masonry or adobe villages. Today, there are 19 officially recognized Pueblo nations in New Mexico and 1, Hopi, in Arizona. Despite sharing the Pueblo architectural tradition and many cultural features, the Pueblo peoples are not a single nation. They speak languages from at least 4 distinct language families and maintain distinct cultural and ceremonial traditions. The Pueblo peoples. Overview. Eastern Pueblos. The Pueblos along the Rio Grande corridor in New Mexico. Taos, Picuras, Oque-Oinge, Santa Clara, San Ildefonso, Nambe, Tesuque, Pojoaque, Cochiti, Santo Domingo, San Felipe, Santa Ana, Zia, Jemez Sandia, and Isleta. Maintained close geographic relationships with Spanish colonial authorities from 1598 onward, and developed specific strategies for preserving their sacred traditions under sustained pressure. Western Pueblos, Zuni in western New Mexico, the largest single village Pueblo with approximately 10,000 members, and the Hopi villages of Arizona. Zuni and Hopi maintained greater geographic distance from Spanish colonial centers. Acoma Pueblo, called Sky City, a mesa-top pueblo approximately 357 feet above the surrounding valley floor, inhabited since approximately 1150 CE. Acoma is recognized as the oldest continuously inhabited community in the United States. Its position on the mesa was both a defensive strategy and a sacred statement. The community lives closer to the sky world than to the ground. Languages. Speak languages from 4 completely unrelated families: Tanoan, Kerasan, Zuni, and Hopi. The Pueblo Revolt of 1680, the most successful indigenous uprising in North American history. The Pueblo Revolt of 1680 is the most successful indigenous uprising against European colonialism in the history of North America, the only instance in which an indigenous people succeeded in permanently expelling European colonizers from their territory and negotiating the terms of their return. Understanding the revolt is essential to understanding contemporary Pueblo sacred life, because the revolt was fundamentally a religious revolution, a resistance to the Spanish suppression of Pueblo sacred traditions that ended in the physical expulsion of Spanish colonial authority and the restoration of Pueblo ceremony. The Pueblo Revolt, the sacred dimension, the suppression beginning with the Spanish arrival in 1598 under Juan Donat. Spanish colonial authorities systematically suppressed Pueblo sacred practices. Kiva ceremonies were forbidden. Sacred masks and ceremonial objects were burned. Pueblo religious leaders were whipped, hanged, or enslaved for practicing their traditions. By the 1670s, the suppression had become severe enough to trigger specific resistance. Pope, the leader of the revolt, a Tiwa-speaking Pueblo man from Oque-Oinge, also called Pope, organized the most politically sophisticated indigenous uprising in North American history. Working from Taos Pueblo in the north, he coordinated simultaneous uprisings across all 19 pueblos, speaking at least 6 different languages and representing genuinely distinct political communities, scheduled for August 80. The revolts, the Pueblo peoples rose simultaneously across New Mexico, killing approximately 400 Spanish colonists. The 33 Franciscan missionaries, including the governor Antonio de Otermin, fled south to El Paso del Norte. The Pueblo peoples had successfully expelled the Spanish colonial presence from their homeland. The 12-year freedom and the negotiated return. The Spanish returned in 1692 under Diego de Vargas. This time, however, the terms were different. The Spanish colonial authorities agreed that the most aggressive suppression of Pueblo sacred practice would not be resumed. The kiva ceremonies were not openly suppressed again in the same way. The Pueblo revolt established a precedent of Pueblo resistance that shaped the entire subsequent history of colonial Pueblo relations. Zuni, the Chalaco ceremony step by step. The Chalaco ceremony, held in late November or early December at Zuni Pueblo, is one of the most elaborate and most theologically complete ceremonial events in any indigenous tradition. It is the culmination of the Zuni sacred year, the annual return of the Chalaco to bless newly built homes and to renew the community's relationship with the spirit world. The Chalaco ceremony step by step. Timing the ceremony is timed to the winter solstice and the specific position of the Pleiades, announced approximately a year in advance. The specific date is set by the Pequin based on his astronomical observations. Year-long preparation, the Chalaco ceremony requires a full year of preparation. The families who will host the Chalaco figures in their homes must complete or expand those homes to accommodate the 10-foot figures, must produce specific quantities of food for the feast, and must undertake specific ceremonial obligations throughout the preparation year. The Kachina Council, throughout the preparation year, the Koyimji serve as intermediaries between the living community and the spirit world, conveying the community's preparations and prayers to the Kachina spirits. Step 1. The return of the Council of the Gods. The ceremony begins with the return of the Council of the Gods, supernatural figures including Sayakia, the Salimopia, and others, who enter the village from the sacred directions and conduct specific ceremonies at the sacred locations within the village. Step 2. The arrival of the Chalaco. At nightfall, the 6 Chalaco figures emerge from the Zuni River and enter the village, crossing a footbridge that spans the divide between the spirit world and the human world. Their arrival is one of the most dramatically powerful ceremonial moments in any Native American tradition. Step 3. The all-night ceremony in the Chalaco houses. Each Chalaco figure enters a specific host house and performs the all-night ceremony, dancing, reciting the entire Zuni cosmological and historical narrative, blessing the house and its occupants, and receiving specific offerings from the host family and the assembled community. Step 4. The dawn race. As the sun rises, the Chalaco figures emerge from the houses and race through the village. The racing is understood as the Chalaco testing their strength and the community's readiness for the blessing to hold. Step 5. The departure. The Chalaco figures return to the spirit world, crossing back over the river bridge. Their departure closes the ceremony, but the blessing of the houses and the community is understood as lasting for the year until their return. The rain dance, calling water to the desert, step by step. The rain dance, or more accurately, the rain ceremony, is the most widely known Pueblo ceremonial form outside the Pueblo communities, and also the most misunderstood. It is not merely a dance, asking for rain. It is a ceremony of sacred reciprocity, the community offering their most concentrated and most sustained sacred attention to the spirit world, and the spirit world responding with the specific gift that the desert community's survival requires, water. The rain ceremony, structure and step by step. The kiva preparation. The ceremony begins not in the plaza but in the kiva, with days of prayer, song, and the specific preparations conducted by the medicine societies responsible for rain ceremony. The prayer sticks are made. The specific altars are constructed inside the kiva, and the ceremonial leaders conduct the restricted kiva portion of the ceremony that precedes the public plaza ceremony. Step 1. The emergence from the kiva. At the appointed time, the dancers emerge from the kiva through the hatchway. The emergence from below replicates the emergence of the people from the underworld, and each dance ceremony is a reperformance of that original sacred event. Step 2. The procession to the plaza. The dancers process to the village plaza, typically 2 lines, male dancers alternating with female dancers. The specific costumes, specific body paint, specific items carried by each dancer are all precisely specified by the ceremony's requirements and the dancer's specific ceremonial role. Step 3. The dance itself, the specific footfall patterns, the specific movements of the gourd rattles, the specific body postures, is the prayer made physical. The dancers are not performing for an audience, they are conducting a ceremony that does something. The difference between a rain dance and a theatrical recreation of a rain dance is the difference between surgery and a film about surgery. Step 4. The songs. The accompanying singers perform specific songs in specific languages that carry specific prayers. The songs are not in modern forms of the Pueblo languages, but in archaic sacred language that has been maintained specifically for ceremonial use, in some cases, in a language no longer spoken in ordinary life. Step 5. The multiple sets. A full rain ceremony typically involves multiple sets of dances through the day. The dancers retire to rest and eat between sets, then return. The full ceremony may last from before dawn to after sunset, with the prayers accumulating in intensity through the day. Step 6. The distribution of sacred food. At specific intervals, the women of the hosting clan distribute food to the community. The specific foods are part of the ceremony's sacred language, each food associated with specific sacred qualities and specific relationships with the spirit world. The halagricity lends the kiva and sacred community. The Pueblo tradition offers halagricity, the most complete available model of what it means for a community to maintain a specific sacred place, the kiva, as the living threshold between the ordinary and the sacred world, tended continuously, entered with specific protocol, and understood as the point from which the community's relationship with the spirit world is renewed through every ceremony. The emergence and the sacred container. Every kiva maintains a sipapu, the small hole in the floor representing the emergence point through which the ancestors came from the world below. Every ceremony conducted in the kiva is a renewal of the original emergence. The people entering the kiva descend into the below-world relationship, conduct their sacred work in that relationship, and emerge back into the ordinary world changed by what happened below. This is the most complete available spatial model of what the Halagric Rituals book is doing when it describes how to open and close sacred space. The kiva is the most sustained, most institutionally complete, and most architecturally specific expression of the sacred container concept in any tradition. The rain comes because the ceremony is done correctly. The ceremony is done correctly because the people remember who they are. The people remember who they are because the kiva is still open. Pueblo understanding of ceremonial continuity. Acoma Pueblo, inhabited since approximately 1150 CE. The Xalaco still crosses the river at Zuni every December. The kiva sipapu is still there. The corn dance still moves through the plaza at Santo Domingo every August. The Pueblo Revolt of 1680 remains the only successful permanent expulsion of a European colonial power in North American history. The tradition earned its survival. Grand Rising. Personal Reading Series Halagricity, or IQ Productions, or June 2026.